The most shocking events so far in the turmoil sweeping the Middle East are unfolding in Libya, with reports that Colonel Gaddafi's security forces have been machine gunning protesters in the city of Benghazi. Those who've been able to get their voices heard, with communications largely cut off, have made a desperate appeal for help from the outside world. Well, joining us now from Darlington is the Foreign Secretary, William Hague. Very good morning to you, Foreign Secretary. Well, what help can the UK offer these people in Libya?
Well, I think it's very important, first of all, to make clear that the world is watching, despite the fact that TV cameras don't have access, that we can't see on your screens images such as we've seen from Egypt and Bahrain. We can't see those things from Libya because it is such a closed society to the international media. Nevertheless, the world is watching and will find out in due course what has happened there. And I think we have to increase the international pressure and condemnation. The United Kingdom condemns what the Libyan government has been doing and how they have responded to these protests, and we look to other countries to do the same. So I will be raising that at the meeting of the European Union foreign ministers, which takes place in Brussels tomorrow. We'll be encouraging Arab countries too to voice their condemnation of these actions. The best way forward is dialogue in all of these situations, and that is what we are asking for.
Dialogue with Gaddafi, a dictator. The UK has been trying to normalise relations, I suppose, with him over recent years. The release of Abdel Basit al-Megrahi, oil deals, etc. Isn't this showing us that the old rule applies, the rule from the 1930s? You cannot appease a dictator.
Yes, it does show that, and that's why I feel very comfortable using strong language about the behaviour of the Libyan government. I think we should recognise, however, that the improvement in relations with Libya from during the 1990s did help to ensure that Libya stopped pursuing a nuclear program, a weapons of mass destruction program. So there were important gains for the international community in trying to normalise relations with Libya. So I don't think we should regard that as a mistake. But certainly in this situation where disorder has broken out, where people are trying to protest and pursue legitimate political grievances, and they are met with sniper fire, with machine guns, with heavy weapons. There is evidence, there are reports of the use of artillery and anti-aircraft weapons, and of over 200 people dead in Benghazi. That's a report that's not verified yet, but those are reports coming through this morning. Well, then the world should not hesitate to condemn those actions.
Isn't there a contradiction in that, though, Foreign Secretary, with respect, in that you say you think it was not wrong to attempt to normalise relations with Colonel Gaddafi, who we understand and have always understood is an undemocratic, to say the least, dictator who's now machine gunning his own people? Perhaps we've hoped to keep him in power there, and he wouldn't be able to be doing this if we had not so-called normalised relations.
I doubt that what happened in attempts to normalise relations made a difference to Colonel Gaddafi staying in power. Though it is a case that illustrates the conflicting pressures in foreign policy, where, of course, it is important to encourage even unpleasant regimes to do things that are necessary for the peace of the world. And that is why we have discussions with them. As diplomats, as foreign ministers, we don't just do business with people we agree with all of the time. We have to deal with regimes we disagree with in order to try to push them in the right direction, and that is what has happened in the case of Libya. That's why I went to Syria 3 weeks ago. We have many differences with Syria, but it is important to engage with them and try to get them to behave in what we regard as a constructive way. So these issues are not black and white, but when it comes to basic human rights, and voicing not only our concern but our condemnation about repression and violence against protesters, well then that is black and white, and we're very, very clear where we stand on that.
So just to be clear on this, what you're laying out there in terms of dealing with so-called unpalatable regimes, Foreign Secretary, let's say the wave of protests, and we may already have done so, reaches Saudi Arabia, probably our key ally, the West's key ally in the region, a repressive, undemocratic regime, but on this one you'd stand foursquare behind them because they're so important.
Well, of course, many of these countries, in terms of the security of the region, are our allies. That doesn't mean their societies are the same as ours, or that they respect human rights in the way that we would like them to do. And that is why we encourage sensible reform. Our message to all the governments of this region is that it's important to recognize legitimate political and economic grievances, to encourage good economic development, to encourage more open and flexible political systems. And that's the discussion I had yesterday, a good discussion actually, with the Crown Prince of Bahrain, who is trying now to embark on a real dialogue in Bahrain with opposition groups. That is the right way forward. That's the sort of thing that the United Kingdom encourages.
I mean, it is giving you a headache, clearly, isn't it? So, just to be clear on this, Colonel Gaddafi should stand down. On that we all agree, but King Fahd, maybe he should stay.
No, we're not trying. This is why I don't get involved in saying who should be running individual countries. Our relationship is with countries, not with individuals. And we stand for certain things we regard as universal, human rights and political freedoms, and the people's right to economic progress as well. But we don't try to choose who is running individual countries or to tell them exactly what they should be doing in those countries.
It's fine for Colonel Gaddafi to stay on then?
Well, I'm sure that will be resolved within Libya. We are not going to start saying who should go and who should come. These are sovereign nations. But what Colonel Gaddafi should be doing is respecting basic human rights, and there is no sign of that in the dreadful response, the horrifying response of the Libyan authorities to these protests.